Hey, welcome to Fans of the Forge. I'm Chris. To my right we have
Theresa.
To my left we have
I am Sean.
And calling in via Skype we have special guest Geoff Feder of Feder Knives. How you doing, man?
Guys, I want to thank you so much for allowing me to be on your podcast. This is great. I appreciate it.
Well, I've been a big fan of Knife Talk for a while now, and I think I actually started listening right after you joined up with Craig and Mareko there. So
right.
Been listening for a while. I really enjoy it. I turned Sean on to it, and yeah, we're just excited.
Teresa's not interested.
He didn't share
it's
this
fine.
with me until like this week.
Don't worry. I'm with you. I understand. I'm actually in Teresa's camp. I probably wouldn't listen to it either if I was Teresa.
Well, so if people don't know Geoff from Knife Talk Podcast, we have a little bit of background information here. So I was reading up on your past, and you have a BFA in sculpture from Kenyon College.
That's right.
So that's pretty interesting. And then you started off as a sculptor after that, and before, I looked at your bio, excuse me, but you were working for artists, and then you got into cooking school and joined the Charlie Palmer group, and then you went back to sculpture. So that's a heck of a journey there.
I went the wrong way. The whole way I went the wrong way. The one thing I'll say is I learned how to weld as an art student, and I will say this to all your listeners: learning how to weld from an art teacher is the worst idea you can ever do. They are the worst welding teachers ever. So I went to school. I was really interested. When I was a kid, the background is when I was a kid, I wasn't allowed to have the toys that I wanted. And my dad, who was a very handy guy, and he had a shop, he said, listen, I know we didn't have guns in the house, so he said, you can't have toy guns. All my friends have toy guns. And I had these dumb sticks, and I hated it. And he said, listen, you can't have any guns, but I'll teach you how to make stuff. So he got me on the bandsaw when I was like 11 or 12, and I started making my own stuff. And then it got to the point where I was far more interested in what I was making or the way I got to make these things than what I actually made. So I was doing a lot of that. And then when I got to college, I really thought, all right, well, maybe I'm going to do this. And I was waiting for the bandsaw. There was a huge line, and this friend of mine said, hey kid, don't wait for glue to dry. I'll teach you how to weld. And no one was welding because everyone was terrified. And then I started welding, and then it got to the point where I was just like, that's all I'm going to do is metalwork. And then I ended up working for other artists after, on the summers and stuff like that, basically being a fabricator, and I did a lot of steel work. The funny thing is, and I've said this in the past, is, welders, if you can work a MIG welder, it's pretty easy to get into a fabrication shop. So I ended up jumping around working for other artists, and then as a fabricator, and then I was making my own sculpture. And then out of fear, I went to culinary school because I was about to marry my wife, and her family was not thrilled that she was marrying an artist. So I went to culinary school, and then I ended up working for the Charlie Palmer Group. And then I ended up getting a job at the Center for Metal Arts. And I was a fabricator at the Center for Metal Arts. They had a wing back before Pat Quinn ran it. It was Fine Architectural Metalsmiths in the Center for Metal Arts. And the Fine Architectural Metalsmiths was more railings and wrought iron and traditional blacksmithing. And then we would have classes at the Center for Metal Arts with Fred Christ and Uri Hoffey, and all these other blacksmiths would come, and we'd teach classes. So I was always the assistant to those classes, and I was the assistant, and I helped run the class. I helped assist the classes and helped assist the teachers. And I was doing, I was paid to be a blacksmith. So I learned how to be a blacksmith there. And then, I left, and then I helped a friend of mine, John Ledford, who run this school called Hudson River Ironworks, up not too far from me. And that's where I met Matt Paul, MP Knives. And then he was teaching bladesmithing classes, and I was helping him. And I'd already been a blacksmith for a while, so I was like, well, let me give this a whirl. And I was helping him, and I was forging out a little, bushcraft knives or whatever. And I was like, all right, this is kind of neat. And then that's how I started making knives.
Oh, you just answered our first question too, actually.
Boom. See, we're gonna get through all the red tape, and then we're gonna talk about the real stuff. Go ahead.
So you talked about that's how you started forging knives. Do you still have the first knife that you forged?
My business partner has it. Yeah, it has. My business partner has it in our shop in New York City. So yeah. Cool. But I'm not sentimental. That's the thing. That's the problem with a lot of these knife makers and sculptors and blacksmiths is they're too sentimental about the first things they made. The key is always the next one's going to be better. So whatever you make, you can't get too in love with the thing that you make. It's always the next one. So I don't even think about the first one. Question two done. Question two, number done.
Take the next one.
Sure. Coming from the cooking industry and working with some top-level chefs, does that push you toward making more chef and kitchen knives?
Well, when I first started making knives, I was forging those bushcraft knives, it's kind of brute to forge style, so there's a lot of heavy scale on it and stuff like that. And I really wanted to make knives for people to use. I'm not a hunter. I was never, I never used the tactical knives or any of that. So I was a cook, and my friends are cooks, and my friends are chefs. And I was like, you know what? I want to make things for people to use, not to be something that's like a fetish, a fetish object. So I started making culinary knives, and I started making them for chef friends of mine. And then one of the businesses, part of our business at Feder Knives, is we work with the chef, and we'll let them design the knife, and then we'll use their social media, and then we'll make a limited edition. And so where I'm allowing, the custom experience for the chef, and you're kind of creating something that they would want. So the answer is yes.
Okay.
A lot of culinary. I'd say probably 90% of my knives are culinary knives.
Okay. Do you have a favorite blade style or design?
I would say that it's interesting because I really like full tang knives. When you're in culinary school, they're not interested in you showing up with some like high-end Japanese, sushi knife. They don't want you to do that. They want you to come in with the Western style full tang knives. And I've always liked that style. I don't have a favorite. I like doing it all. And if I were to make myself a knife, which I have like the beaters, I get the stuff that, gets rejected or it's broken or, whatever, something happened. I would probably have an 8-inch full tang chef knife. Yeah.
Nice. So how long have you been painting the watercolor blueprints for your knives?
Well, I started out when I was in college, I was doing a lot of watercolor, and I had to take these when you're an art major, you can't just take the class you want. You got to take a lot of other ones. So I ended up getting into these watercolor classes. My father was a watercolorist, and I hated watercolor because it's so process oriented. It's almost more like printmaking than anything else. It's not like, I think the people when they see painting, they think that you get a little bit of this and then a little bit of that. But watercolor is not like that. You gotta lay down layers. So it's closer to printmaking than it is to actually painting with acrylics or oils. Mm-hmm. So I was doing a lot of that back in the day. And then when I started, I do so many different styles of knives. I couldn't mock everything up. I couldn't mock up the colors and everything like that. But I could paint them, and I could give you a pretty close proximity to how old it was going to look like. So that was the easiest way. So at night, I'd do the watercolors. And then what happened was I started using the watercolors as my blueprints. And then I started making, two things. I started making watercolors as the blueprints. And then the interesting thing is this, I started doing these progression drawings. And the funny thing is when I first started the Center for Metal Arts, they were paying me to take these classes. But the expectation was you got to know what they're doing. So you have to make sure you're doing. And if you've ever taken a blacksmithing class or a bladesmithing class or usually these forging classes, here's what you end up seeing. You see 5 or 6 guys wearing, carpenter jeans and Carhartt pants, and they're standing with their legs a little bit farther apart than their shoulders, and they got their hands on their hips, and they're not paying attention. So with blacksmithing, everything is little steps. And you have to go to, you have to travel see these tiny little steps. So I started to realize that the best thing for me to do is take notes. And I was taking these I would draw the notes. And what happened was all these guys standing there with their hands by their hips, like pretending like they know what's going on. They have no idea. They would turn to me and say, "What did he do? What did he do there? How did he hold it against the anvil?" Or what? Because I think that there's this huge misconception with blacksmithing that people, and I'll get back to the watercolor. I know I just kind of went off. But The thing is with blacksmithing is I think that people don't realize that it's not just taking a piece of steel, putting it against the anvil and hitting it. You're holding your steel against, the anvil at different the edges are different. There's a crisp edge, there's a radius edge. You're using every different part differently. So I think that what happens is that people they don't realize. They just think, you just hit it with a hammer and that's the end of it, which couldn't be farther from the truth. So I started to do watercolors of the progression drawings. And the first one I did was the Power Hammer Rose from Fred Christ. And then I was doing tongs that Hoffy made. And then I was doing these progression drawings. And it was just my notes. But then I started doing notes for hammer makers, like Sunset Forge. I was doing hammer for him. For Dan Whiteoff, I was doing axes for him. And what I would do is I'd be like, well, give me your information. I'll do a copy of the watercolors, the progression, and then I'll give you a copy. It's yours to do with whatever you want, and it's not for me to sell. I just want it for my own notes. And the thing is, the reason why the watercolors are so good is because you could, wherever the steel was supposed to be hot, you could make it red. So you knew exactly where it should be. Steel, when you're putting a piece of steel in the forge, that doesn't mean you have to have the whole thing hot. Right. So there are parts of it you don't want to be hot. There are parts of it that you're going to overheat. So I was really great way for me to kind of translate notes and how to do things for people. And it's gotten crazy. Lynn Ray, who was one of the master bladesmith, I did for him. I approached him. I said, listen, I'd love to do this. And it's all very selfish, to be honest with you. I just want to know how he does it. And then what I do is I give him a copy, and then I just get my little light box out and do another version for him. And then I give it to him, and I say, Lynn, this is yours. I'm not interested in giving it away. I'm not interested in selling it. This is your information. I'm not here for the crumbs. I want the loaf. This isn't me selling prints of other people's information. Didn't do anything for me. So that was how I started doing that. And then I started doing more watercolors of my knives. And I'm kind of the kind of person I can't just sit still. So at night I can do the watercolors. And the thing is, the watercolors is you can do a pile of them, and then you can layer the color on. And then when one's drying, you can work on another one. So that's the answer for that. So I've always been doing them more. I got contacted to do a book, but we'll see. We'll see.
Oh, that'd be pretty cool, because I really enjoy seeing the artwork that you put up, as well as like the knives that it then compares to in real life. It's a neat way to view it. I mean, not a lot of guys will show you the full sketches and things like that when they're putting these knife pictures up. Sometimes they'll show it in progression. And sometimes all you see is, this is the knife I just made. And getting all these different iterations of it is just an interesting aspect. And as potential possible bladesmiths of the future, as we learn ourselves, it opens up the doors for us to kind of see how these things are done. So,
well, I appreciate it. And actually when I was talking to Lynn Ray about it, he was very along the lines of, this is, he wants to be able to pass this information down. And when I was the Center for Metal Arts, and I was a member of ABANA, that's the Blacksmith Association. There's only 3,000 members in the United States. That's insane. And as at the time, you weren't getting a lot of information being passed down. This was before Instagram, before social media. So you weren't getting a lot of this information passed down. And it was shocking to me that, and the schools were really catering towards blacksmiths, not your average person. So there's a lot of opportunities that schools now, with Nick Rossi over the New England School of Metalwork, and now Pat Quinn down at the Center for Metal Arts, there's a lot more classes that are going to be available for people, especially stuff for people that maybe they never want to make knives again, or maybe they never want to do it again.
Right.
It's not going to just be, hopefully it's not going to just be like, hey, you got to take 5 classes on how to make S hooks before you can make a pair of tongs. There's going to have to be people want to make stuff that they might not want to be blacksmiths.
Right.
So I don't know why I think I derailed you. I apologize.
No.
Okay.
That was good.
Do you have a preferred knife making method, like stock removal or forging or Damascus?
Well, if I could, my business. The funny thing about the business is stock removal. I would say 95% of my knives are stock removal, and it's just for the ability to kind of provide value to the customer. If it were up to me, I'd only forge everything. If I never had to touch a grinder again, I'd never touch a grinder again. I love forging. That's what I did before. That's all I did. So I love I love forging. I've been doing some integral knives lately, which I love. Integral. I on the podcast, I've been getting these comments. They're saying that I'm saying it wrong. I either say it's and then I get these like high level dudes calling you. It's not integral. It's integral. I'm like, all right, whatever it is, you know what I'm talking about. So that's the ones that I like the most. And then I would love to forge. If I could only forge, I would only forge. But people want shiny knives. They don't like the brute to forge finish isn't really for your average customer, which is mine. I focus on, I want the people who buy my knives are regular people who've maybe never bought a custom knife before. Right. And that's what I like, because so being able to kind of pass down savings and trying to get people in the door with, not $29 knives, but you know what I'm talking about. Something to get, introductory into getting, into that custom experience. So my preferred is forged, but the reality is it's mostly stock removal.
Well, is the that knife set?
Yes.
From A&E. I mean, that's brute to forge, right?
Oh, geez, don't even start with that.
Yeah, I think it's somebody who just bought a stencil. That's what I've always said. You look at those guys have made that knife before.
Yeah, so
just bought a new stencil.
So your new best friend, Spicy Mike, he bought one of those knives. He has one of those.
Oh, did he really?
Spicy Mike. We have to kind of recap Spicy Mike, right? You have to see, this is broadcasting. So some of your listeners don't know about Spicy Mike.
Well, we have had him on for an interview before.
Oh, you have?
Yes. When he won his episode of Forge and Fire, we had
Spicy
him on.
Mike was on Forge and Fire?
Yeah.
He won Forge and Fire.
I thought he was just a goddamn hot sauce guy.
No.
That's how we know him.
He won, and I gave him shit because he was putting hot sauce on a banana during the episode, and I called him out on it.
Because he did it first.
Because I did it first.
This is the first we've heard of Spicy Mike being on the podcast, being on Forge and Fire.
Well, Mareko didn't mention it, but
no, he certainly didn't. He thought his name was. All he did is say his name was Spicy Mike. Spicy Mike.
He thought he's just like a weed guy, but he's like a pepper guy.
I mean, no, it was so bizarre. We were talking about, he was talking about preparing for your event. You're doing this event this coming Sunday, right?
Yes.
You're doing a hot wings test, right?
Yes,
so go ahead.
Let's go all the way around here and figure out what we're talking about. So we'll start with the hot sauce hammer off. So that's actually, I'm involved with it. Sean and I are doing videography for Dragon's Breath Forge. So this is their event, and they are hiring us for it because they like the videos that we've been putting out.
Very cool.
So that's how we got involved. And we're also one town over from them, so it's real easy.
Connecticut's in the house.
Exactly.
I won't make any cracks about Connecticut, much like Mareko. Mareko makes tons of cracks.
It's okay. We understand what
he's leaving
Connecticut's
anyway.
like.
We're kicking him out.
He hasn't even gone to Frank Pepe's yet. He doesn't know.
Oh, jeez.
He don't even know.
Sacrilege.
That's it.
And there's one town over from the Forge.
Yeah,
so
there's
it's
one in Watercolor.
White clam pie. I got you. I'm with you.
So anyway, that event's happening. Mareko's talking about how they're prepping by using Spicy Mike's hot sauce as their test stuff.
Yeah.
Now, we got in touch with Spicy Mike a couple months ago, again, because he was on Forge and Fire. They made this whole point of him putting hot sauce on a banana while he was on the show, while forging something. He needed a snack.
He needed potassium. He was cramping up.
Yeah, so they gave him a banana. He pulled out his own hot sauce that he brought with him and put it on the banana and was eating it. And then he made it to the final round, and they went out of their way to do a shot in the forge that he was working at of just a pile of peppers in the forge, on a table in the forge, just a giant pile of different peppers. And so we're like, what the hell is up with this guy? And we get a hold of him. I think he saw our wrap up and was commenting on it. And I was like, listen, dude, just come on for an interview and we'll chat about it. And so we're actually pretty friendly with Spicy Mike. So when he came
He's in Massachusetts.
Well, he was in Connecticut at the Dragon's Breath Forge.
Right.
For a hammer-in. And we missed him, but I was like, hey, man, I didn't know you were going to be in town. If you're still around, let's meet up. So he was up in Massachusetts with, I I believe Ryan Brewer has a spot up there where he's working. He's another guy that was on the show with him. And we're like, hey, dude, let's get some pizza. So we met him for dinner one night, and he brought a bunch of his hot sauces with him. And we were like testing it out on pizza and wings. It's good stuff. It is good stuff. But so we have a back history with Spicy Mike.
Certainly do.
So that being said,
I'm embarrassed that I don't know this, but that's fine. There's a lot of
and he's going to be on
fire stuff I don't know.
He's going to be on A Knife or Death.
oh yeah, he's also
is he?
on Knife or Death, the season 3,
Oh.
whatever the hell that airs.
What does Spicy Mike need me to make a T-shirt for him? He don't need my help.
No.
I'll make you a
No,
T-shirt.
but that would be
Mike. Don't worry,
hilarious.
Mike.
You should still make a T-shirt.
I'll make him a T-shirt.
Listen, you guys laughed way too hard to not make a shirt.
Dude, I don't know what happened. That episode, the last episode of Knife Talk, it was like we were leaving. Mareko was talking about this event. Next thing you know, he talks about this guy came into my shop named Spicy Mike, and Craig and I. Well, you have to listen to the podcast.
Yeah.
Listen to the podcast, and you can find out. It was probably my favorite episode of so far because of Spicy Mike. Now that I know that he was a Forge and Fire champion, I got to watch my P's and Q's around Spicy Mike.
Which, we actually, I was like halfway through that episode when Mareko was like, hey, did you hear us call you out on Knife Talk? And we're like, what? Like, you called out Bands of the Forge? And so it was like leaving from, chatting with the guys that I listened to it on the way home and heard the whole, when you called us out, and then the whole Spicy Mike thing. And I died. It was hilarious.
It was funny. Yeah. It's
So-
funny. Knife Talk has changed a lot, and a lot of that change has been good. And when Craig started Knife Talk, Craig Lockwood started Knife Talk a couple of years ago, and I was the third guest. He had Walter Sorrells, then Alex Steele, and then me. I was like, me? What do you want me for? And it was because my buddy Jesse Savage he's one of the best. He's an awesome blacksmith. He runs the Blacksmith's Pub podcast, and he says, "Hey Jeff, go check this out." So and then I was on a couple more times, and I actually was a guest host for him. And then he just got, it's hard. As you guys know, it's hard to kind of create chemistry with somebody, And the thing is I'm a huge podcasting fan, a huge radio fan, and I used to do a radio show with a podcast with a good friend of mine for a long, long time, and creating that chemistry is very hard. And what he was doing is an unbelievable job. He would orient people how to get the software so they could record the podcast, and then he'd have to come up with questions, and he'd have to create chemistry with this person whom a lot of them have never talked on a podcast or any kind of this kind of before. And he did an awesome job, but it got exhausting, as you can imagine. Scheduling, all the scheduling and all that nonsense. So then when he approached me and Mareko, I was going to do my own podcast for a while, and then I was just like, you can do all the work. It's fine by me. I'll just go on for an hour and bullshit with you. It's fine by me. And we're having a good time.
Well, that's great. And so, we're fans of that, the whole show. And shout out to Craig over at Chop Knives, because he does a great job with it.
He does all the heavy lifting. He does all the, we do it differently than what we're doing now is you're just recording the Skype talk. We record 3 tracks. We send them to Craig. Craig mixes them all together, and he does a lot of work. So shout out to Craig Lockwood.
So let's move back in
Sure.
to
Whatever
our
you want.
questions.
Whose turn is it? Is it Sean's?
Yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Are you making sculptures alongside knife making in your business?
Not right now. I once in a while I'll get a commission that I try to squeeze in. The last art show I was at, I was going to do a solo show in this art gallery, and I was ready. I was all fired up. I said, I'm going to do all new work, and I had 2 meetings, and they did a studio visit. It was a whole big production. And then they said to me, well, the show will be open for 4 weeks on Saturdays and Sundays, and we need you to be there half the time. So it was going to be open for 8 days, and I had to be there for 4 days and sell my own sculpture and give them 50%. I was like, fuck this, I'm going to make knives. So it was really like one of those things where I was very, very, it was luckily for me, I was able to, I have the ability and I have the business that I can just do that. So once in a while, like there's a commission I might be doing soon that I want to do. I'm trying to do the stuff that I want to do. I don't get a chance to make sculpture that much anymore. I'm not bummed about it. At some point, I know that someday I will. I'm getting the similarities between artists and knife makers. The similarities is that you're really getting a rush, and people who make things, blacksmiths, bladesmiths, or cabinet makers, woodworkers, it's never really the end. It's like getting to the journey from envisioning something and then designing it and then executing it. That's where you get the rush. So I was getting the same rush making knives, or even just a stage of knives, as you would making sculpture. So I'm good. And once in a while we'll see. I mean, I'm not pining away to make sculpture. I'm pining away to make business.
Well, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
So we're going to switch it up a little bit here, and this is going to be kind of a two-parter. So how did the Epicurious video come about, and is it surreal to see a video of you on YouTube that has over 2.5 million views?
I will tell you not only this, I'll tell you the front story, the back story, the whole story. I was I was approached because Cut Brooklyn, Joel at Cut Brooklyn, was supposed to do something for Epicurious, and then he broke his leg or something like that. And he says, Feder does these live streams, go get him. So they contacted me to do the episode that Will Griffin did. Will Griffin is a bladesmith in Red Hook, Brooklyn, awesome guy, and he did a knife comparison video. I was supposed to do that one, and then I went to a couple of meetings, and they're like, we want to put you into this price points. So I wrote the episode. That's what, that's the magic of TV is you think that they pulled me off the street and I was able to be coherent for, 16 minutes without stuttering once. Trust me, we're on there for 7 hours. So I wrote the thing, and then they gave us, we had to go through, I had to create these, these different contrasts, and I got a lot of control over that, which I was appreciative of. And they didn't know. It's not like there's a guild over at the Condé Nast that knows it's not like they have master bladesmiths at Condé Nast. They don't know shit. I could have said anything. I could have changed I could have said whatever I wanted. It would never have made a difference. So I was able to, the Damascus knife at the end was, they were like, I had 6 days to cough up all those knives. Luckily for me, I know that the people at JB Prince in Manhattan, it's one of the biggest culinary places in New York. Tim Music's a friend of mine. I was like, go call Tim. He'll get you whatever you need. And then they said, well, do you think you could get us a Damascus bread knife? Who's got a Damascus bread knife? So the first thing I do is call Mareko, because he's a buddy of mine. I was like, hey, Mareko, well, you know what? I was going to call Nick Ganger. I was going to call a couple guys. I was like, do you know where I could borrow a serrated bread knife? He's like, yeah, I got one right here. And I said, really? He's like, yeah, I'll drive it down. Because we were afraid. I had such a limited amount of time. So he drove it down. And then when we got to, and I was like, no one's touching this knife. I mean, this is a $5,000 knife. No one's touching the $4,000, whatever it is. No one's touching this knife. And we got down there. They got everything else except for originally the boning knife was supposed to be a Ginsu knife. I wanted to do a Ginsu thing, and they couldn't find the Ginsu knife. So I come in, and they were going and we're talking. And they're bringing all the knives. They got all the knives that we requested. I needed specific. We wanted to get specific ones just to make them very. And then there's no Ginsu knife. And I said, well, you can't go to get a Ginsu knife? We couldn't find one. I was like, what are you talking about? Walmart, Kmart, going all these places, we couldn't find one. I said, you mean to tell me I found a Damascus bread knife in 6 days and you couldn't find a Ginsu knife? And it was just like, and then one of the production assistants starts to grab it. And I said, listen, I'm going to just tell you this right now. If you drop this knife, I'm going to put my hands on you. And it got very quiet. And I said, I'm sorry. I'm going to put my hands on you. You drop this knife, I'm going to put my hands on you. Didn't touch it. I had carried the rest of the day. They didn't touch that night. So we did that. We had a good time. They did a great job. They were really, really cool. The director was really awesome. She really knew kind of how to kind of keep me going. Because it was, I've never done that before. The shoot was crazy because there's tons of lights and cameras on just like super everything all over. And you're nervous. And, this isn't what I do for a living. And they got it done. And in regards to being surreal, I don't really kind of believe in the concept of fame. I don't think that it exists. So I really try not to think about it. I really don't it's weird. and fine, but it's like, now what? And I don't really get all hung up on it. I don't really believe in the concept of fame. I don't think it's a tangible thing. So the answer is it's fine. And, yeah, I'm not, the funny part is I didn't read the YouTube comments because I got a message from Will Griffin. When he did his, he says, listen, our hands are tore up. When you're a knife maker, you put your hands first. That grinder's tapping your fingers every day. My fingers are a disaster area. So Will says to me beforehand, he says, just be aware that they're going to talk about your hands. I'm like, what do you mean they're going to talk about my hands? I'm like, they're going to go after your hands. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, watch the video with me. His hands look like, he looks like a drug addict. And his hands look like he went through glass. And I was just like, oh yeah. And then all the YouTube videos like, what's up with his fucking hands, man? What the fuck is that guy doing? So then I was just like, well, I'm just not going to read the YouTube comments. And then Jonathan Porter, Doghouse Forge, decides, he and I became friends in Doghouse. He just sends me a message saying, here's what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to just give you a synopsis. So he gave me the synopsis of all the comments. Spent Chris Pratt, Vince Vaughn, fucked up hands, your hands are tore up. So I was just like, all right, fine. It's fine. And then one of the first episodes of Knife Talk, Craig and Mareko was out doing the Joe Rogan show.
Right.
And Craig said to me, well, what you talking about? I said, what'd be funny is if you read the YouTube comments to me. And then I haven't read them, so I'll just react. And it was funny. We had a good time. It was like he just started blasting me with these awful YouTube comments. And I was just like, all right, well, yeah, my hands are bad. Now what? So that's the answer for that. I don't have any other good. They were really cool over there. They were the Condé Nast. They were really, really cool. The people who were there did a nice job. It was a fun experience. Yeah.
Cool. Oh, it's an interesting story to hear. The behind the scenes sort of thing.
Well, they don't. We did everything they did everything. We did everything nothing's sequential.
Right.
So at one point there was a guy running out while we were trying to find any kind of boning knife, and then they came up with the two boning knives. We had to do an audible, so to speak, and we had to really kind of like change it up on the fly. And the other thing is they give you for that room. It's this big, beautiful room with windows, and this is Condé Nast building down by the World Trade Center, and they got that room for 7 hours. So they got to get that shit like that. So the call time was 11. I got there at 11. I was sitting in the makeup chair, if you can believe that, for like hours. I'm like, oh man, the clock. I'm thinking our time is running out. And all of a sudden I'm thinking the pressure, they're doing the lights and the sound, keying everything up. And like the pressure's now on me because they have a limited amount of time. They're paying all these guys. And that was the scariest part, being like, you gotta cough it up. So the funniest part is I didn't know how to finish my sentences. Like I would talk about something and then stare. It was just like very awkward. Of like, and my business partner Tony was there, and he's just like, look, just don't worry, just do your thing. They're in charge of the editing. Just do what you got to do, and don't worry, they're going to edit it. Just talk. So I would, and then it was just very odd, awkward, very, whatever. And then at one point I was just like, I got to get out. And then I started calling out to Tony, and Tony, got to get me out of here. We got to get this thing done. I got to get out. So then at the last point I said, I'm with you. I'm with you came from leave me alone. So I started saying I'm with you to kind of finish a sentence or finish a conversation or get out of a conversation. So then at the end, they put in the I'm with you, which is really funny because that seems to be my unfortunate tag. Oh.
Okay, so now we're going to continue to switch it up.
Dude, I'm with you.
General questions?
Okay.
Do you have a favorite type of mono steel to use?
I like 1084 for carbon steel a lot. 1084 is something that's really easy to use. It's fine. Heat treating is easy, relatively easy. I get good success with it. I like 52100 as well. And the stainless steel I use primarily is 440C.
Okay.
Like 440C.
Nice. I'm with you.
It's like old school. There, my man. My man. Sean's my man. That's the 440C is what you used to get when you went to the county fairs and did the ring toss, and you'd win the Pakistani knives, and you see Pakistan, and then you see 440C.
Wow.
Reminded me of the Rambo knives,
Nice. Do you have a preferred steel combination for making Damascus?
I've only made Damascus once, and it was with 1084 and 52100 with Aaron Wilburn. I don't make a lot of Damascus. I actually just bought some 1084 and 15 and 20 from New Jersey Steel Baron. So I'm going to work on making. I got a bigger forge, a little bit hotter forge. So I'm going to be trying to make some random pattern Damascus and start to work in more forging and more Damascus.
Well, you got a good coach with Morocco if you can squeeze some info out of him.
Oh yeah, I'll squeeze it. We're going to do it. At some point we're going to have a hammer in with him before he leaves for back out west. But yeah, I'm very fortunate. Not to mention this podcast has kind of opened me up to a lot of people have been reaching out, and I get some guys who are, it's a little surprised, gets a little nervous. And speaking of which, back to Forge and Fire is we were doing the podcast, and I was just going kind of bananas, and all of a sudden I get this direct message from Neil Kamamura, which I have never really talked to, and he gives me his phone number. He says, give me a call. And all I can think of is, what did I say? Because I'm sure I said something horrible or something I'm going to get yelled at. So I called him up, nervous, obviously, and he was super, super cool. He was talking about blacksmithing. He knew that we do hammer-ins at Sunset Forge, and he wanted to be involved. And he was super, super cool. But he's a Forge and Fire champion. I was like terrified. He says his telephone number. Call me. I thought I'd said something, unfortunate.
So, do you have a preference for handle material?
I really liked G10 because I like the colors, and also finishing. Micarta, I don't really like finish. The only micarta I use tan canvas micarta. I like tan canvas micarta. Canvas micarta I like. But G10, I love the colors. I love changing the colors, doing a lot of high contrast colors, try to get my old art stuff back by doing contrasting colors. But recently I've been doing a lot more stabilized wood. I've been stabilizing my own wood from a local lumber yard, 3-generation lumber mill in Peekskill, where I am. I've got a connection with them, and I'm able to get wood that they tell me what street it's from, which is the best. So they mill their own wood, and then I end up, when I first started when I was helping my friends make hammers, it was easy to get small pieces of hickory because, when you're buying board feet of hickory or ash, they don't want, the lumber yards, they can't do anything with, 14 inches of, lumber. So it's the same thing with the knives. So I end up getting stuff that they couldn't possibly sell. So it's usually like burls and stuff. That's cool. But recently I've been getting from customers some of these customers are so sentimental. It's insane. They'll give me like a cut off piece of a tree, and they say, can you do anything with this? And what I do is I take the tree, I mill it down a little bit, the branch down to like it's a manageable thing. I stick it in my even heat kiln, and then I dry it out for 48 hours at 200 degrees, and then I stabilize it, and I'm getting great results from these live trees. That's been the craziest, to stabilize, real trees, not just this bullshit you get from the lumber yards. No offense to the lumber yards.
I thought you were going to say you just throw the branch in a fire pit and just use it with something else.
I'm getting the whole concept of stabilizing is, so wood has, do you guys know, should I go and give you a quickie on stabilizing?
Sure.
I'm with you.
For it.
Trademark, my man. So if you have a house that's got a lot of, they got wooden doors and wooden windows, and you're opening them up, they get stuck when it gets very humid. There's a change in temperature, right? And that's because there's air in the wood. So when you're stabilizing wood, what you're doing is you're taking the wood and you're putting it in the vacuum chamber, and you're filling it above the top of the wood with resin. And then you're weighing the wood down in the resin. And then the vacuum chamber is attached to a vacuum. You turn the vacuum on, it sucks the air out of the chamber, and then it sucks all the air out of the wood. So then after 12 hours, 14 hours of pulling out all that air, you turn it off, and wherever there was air, it gets replaced with that resin. So you're gaining a lot of weight. The wood all of a sudden becomes becomes much heavier. It's because it's also denser, and it's a little harder to depending on how you do it. It can be harder to sand, but you're getting a better luster. But it's also not going to change in your handle, so it can't absorb water. Like you go to grandma's house and she's got the handles where the scales are flapping off the sides, right? Well, with your stabilized wood, there's nowhere for wood can't absorb the water. It's all the resin's replacing where would be any absorption. So it's great. I mean, it's great. And to be able to do it yourself, you could put dye in the resin, and you could suck up the dye, and it's great. Actually, the more I've been doing the stabilized stuff, the more simple I've been going, and I like using wood more. I like it all. I don't like micarta. I'm not crazy about micarta. Micarta has a tendency to burn. I don't know if it's the paper or whatever. It's a little bit harder to finish. So micarta can. G10 I love, and I like wood. Micarta's okay. All right, next question. Terrible. That's a terrible answer.
How about like any natural materials like bone or anything?
I've never done anything with bone or antler. Yes, I have. I got some jigged buffalo horn, and I touched it to the grinder, and all of a sudden my shop smelled like a burning down abattoir, and it was like, this is not for me. It is like the smell of misery. If you ever grind horn, it's the smell of defeat. It's not. There's no one's happy. No one's happy in a shop when they're burning down some horns. Here's my next T-shirt: "Burning down the horns." For you.
What's your favorite non-blade thing to make?
What I really enjoy doing is making hammers, and I haven't made a lot. I've made about 5 hammers with Cliff Dufton and Sunset Forge and Jesse and those guys, the Modern Forge guys. I made hammers under the tutelage of John Ariane, Sunset Forge, and I would say that, and I have everything to make the hammers, and I love doing it. But that would be, if I wasn't making knives, I would probably try to make more hammers. It's fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you have any best beginner's advice?
Yeah, take a class. I think that a lot of times, the YouTube videos now are so good. Like, I always send people to Aaron Goff's videos, Michael Trolsky's videos. They're very, very good for getting you into knives making and being fired up. But I tell you what, I think that people make a huge tactical error by not taking a class, because a lot of people do is they'll watch Forge and Fire, and then they'll just buy an anvil, from Harbor Freight or whatever. And all of a sudden they hit it a couple times, and their neighbors are like, "Yo, what's going on?" That I think that a lot of people don't realize that also, especially forging, it's not, if you do it wrong, you can really get hurt, and it's really one of those things that, once again, people think that anvils come from, Looney Tunes. I don't think there's a whole lot of information on proper technique and proper stance and how you're supposed to talk, how you're supposed to stand, or how you're supposed to hold your hammer, or the height of your anvil. And I think that a lot of times the best thing to do, if I were starting out, I would take a class. And it's like going to the gym. You don't just start going to the gym and start throwing weights around.
Right.
Maybe you might want a trainer to kind of tell you what you're doing right or wrong, and also to see if you like it. All of a sudden you just, you buy a 2x72 grinder and you don't like it, you're out.
Yeah, that's true. As we look at the anvil that I bought sitting on our fireplace down here.
Well, we didn't.
But I'm sorry, what I will say is that in regards to young knife makers is, you don't have to have a heat treating oven to make knives, because what you can do is you can have stuff get heat treated professionally. So you can make knives inexpensively, stock removal, without the whole idea. Because I know some people, they all of a sudden they're making fires in their barbecue pits and with hair dryers and stuff, and or snow blowers or whatever they're using. And you don't have to do that. There are companies that will heat treat for you, and that's a better way to step into it. And then, you're also getting guaranteed results in regards to how your knives are heat treated, because that's one of the most critical parts about knife making.
So I'm in the process of building a workshop here at our house. We have an old shed that I'm rehabbing currently, but I've bought a bunch of equipment. Yeah,
Great.
I have an anvil. I just bought a forge because we did take a class and we did some other work with Theo Naz out of Brooklyn.
Sure.
And so I wish we had more time to do it, but it's just a matter of things don't line up easy for us to get out to classes. So
it's hard. That's the hardest part. It's easier said than done.
Right. So I just got this new Propane Forge. I haven't even gotten to use it yet because I have nowhere to put it. But I also know that you just got a new Propane Forge that you had posted about recently.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask, have you always been using Propane Forge or did you use coal forges? And then if you had to choose one that you would prefer, which would it be?
When I started at the Center for Metal Arts, they had 3 coke forges, and we had like 3 Swan forges and a couple of NC forges. And for production, when we were doing railings, we were doing a lot of railings, we were doing a lot of pickets. It was much more economic and efficient to use gas forges because the gas forges are, you're bottoming out at a certain temperature. So it's really, in a coke forge, you cook stuff so fast to make your head spin. You'll literally melt stuff. Yep. It's pretty hard with just regular mild steel forging. It's pretty hard to forget about a piece of steel in a gas forge and it go terribly wrong. Of course, it's different for knife steel. It's that you can't do that. But my experience has always been. I'm more comfortable with gas forges. I like gas forges. I like how even they are. I like how, you have a little bit more control. It's not easy for me to get coke around here. I mean, coal, when I say coke, I'm not saying cocaine. Thank you very much. But as I'm saying, it's not easy for me to get coke around here. But to get a bottle of propane, you just go to the gas station, and that makes it more convenient for me. What kind of forge did you get?
I got a Mathewson Metals metalsmith, so it's like a single burner, I believe.
Nice. Have you started it up yet?
No, I haven't. By the time I got it, it was kind of too cold to do anything outside, and I didn't have anywhere else to put it.
I got a tip from Jonathan Porter of Doghouse Forge. He said, for the first time, you got to open it up outside.
Yep.
Because that's because all of a sudden the paint, all the fumes, the factory stuff, it turns to it's smoke. So like you get terrible odors from it. So you got to do the first hour. You go outside full blast.
Got it.
And you knew that.
Well,
you're fans of
maybe not.
You're fans of the Forge. You should. That's the part of the name of the podcast. You're fans of the Forge. You know that. You know that.
Yeah.
Yes.
What tool do you use most often?
Probably the disc grinder. I use a disc grinder, a 72 by 72 grinder,
yep.
And then the disc grinder I spend a lot of time on. I love the disc grinder. It's my favorite tool. It's the best investment I've gotten in a long time. Gets your knives flat, and your handle is very nice.
I hear you're also a fan of angle grinders.
I don't like angle grinders. You get stuck. You have no choice. That's the thing. It's since I was 19, I started metalworking. I'm 45. Since I was 19, I was metalworking. Everyone has a right angle grinder. They're the cheapest, and they're effective, but they're the most dangerous, and they're the awful.
Pretty destructive.
There's nothing good about it. It's so cheap. It's so cheap, and you can get in so much trouble with a right angle grinder. So I hate them, but you can't help it. We started talking about the right angle grinder community. I think it's everybody who doesn't have like a water jet. Anybody who's not anyone who's not like a multimillionaire is part of the right angle grinder community. We're all part of. We don't want to be. There's no choice. We're not rich enough to get out. So everyone's most metal workers are members of the right angle grinder community. I think Craig's going to be making that T-shirt.
I like it.
Isn't that what you asked for Christmas from your mom?
Oh yeah, I got an angle grinder for Christmas. I can't wait to start using that thing.
They're the worst. We used to talk about when I was I was 19, I was working at this shop for this sculptor, and it was all like old steel, and we'd get right angle grinders with cut brushes, and then we'd take all the rust off and kind of create this very kind of, very modeled, very antique, old rust. And what happens is it's in the summertime in Brooklyn, and you got an 8-inch right angle grinder, and then your shirt comes out and grabs it, and we call it the alligator, because what it does, it rolls up towards your neck. And it's like, that's the worst. Get yourself a braided wire cup and catch your shirt in it, and then call me about it. See how good it is. You'll never want to use a grinder again. Crawls right up towards your neck.
I've used a wire wheel on one to strip paint off an old radiator, and then when I was done, I just would have strands of it like in my shirt, all over the place.
Those you got to get. Those are like, I don't even know how OSHA hasn't come down on the companies that are making those, because those little ones, it's like some sort of like missile system, because those like they shoot everywhere. And like they're in your shirt, whatever. But you got to get the thick braided ones, because they hold themselves together. I don't know. I think that those ones that you're talking about, I think that's for like your cordless drill. Because the thought of putting those in the right angle grinder, it's insane.
Yeah, no, because it came with one of those ones like a disc, and then I also had the ones that were a cup that was the braided.
I mean, who proved that? That's like of all the tools ever approved, that's the most dangerous. There should be lawsuits going everywhere for those things. There you go.
I'm with you.
You can be class action. All right. I got you.
That's
all
3.
All right. I hear you.
When it comes to, I guess, anything you make, are you, stainless or not so much?
Well, when I first started making knives, I was doing mostly carbon steel. That's because what I learned how to use. And then I really wanted to focus my knives towards what people were comfortable with. And all of a sudden people were being like, I love this knife, but how come it's changing color? Or I love this knife, but why is it rusting? And so I'd have to explain the whole idea. And I thought, well, people are used to stainless steel. So I started to look into it, and I started having it heat treated from a friend of mine, Kyle Daly, would heat treat knives for me. And I wanted to provide something for people that they felt comfortable with. Because one of the things that a lot of knife makers do is they say, I'm going to make what I make, and you're going to buy what I make. And I think that if you're in business, I think it's good to kind of look at your customer base and say, well, I want you to have what you want and what you're comfortable with. So I would say that 90% of my knives are stainless steel. And I think that it gives people an opportunity to also use them and not feel like they're these, you got to put white gloves on every time you want to use this knife. I want people to use my knives. I want to feel comfortable using them. And part of that is, some people just are not comfortable with the maintenance of carbon steel. So the answer is I try to I don't want people to be nervous when they're buying my knives. And that sometimes, I'm always surprised. Usually when I do a consultation, most people don't really understand. And they're nervous to say they don't understand about carbon steel because they're afraid I'm going to yell at them or something, which is never the case, And it's just I want you to have what you feel comfortable with. And then they get fired up to maybe down the line say, you know what, I don't have this carbon steel, let's go with that. And then you're trying to kind of give people something that, they have value, but also that they don't feel like, they're getting pushed into something maybe they're not ready for. You don't need to take the Ferrari to go to school, and sometimes you need to, you need a fuel efficient car sometimes to take your kids to school.
A Pinto.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever. Prius, Pinto, Yugo, whatever you want. I'm showing my age. Yugo. I said a Yugo.
Do you have a favorite Damascus pattern?
I do. I love, Mareko's Damascus is so amazing. Like his mosaics pattern Damascus is incredible, and I would say that everything he does, this new briar patch stuff he's doing, is mind blowing. I think that what Mareko's doing is, I think when it comes to what he's doing, he is the top of the food chain. I think I have this, my personal Mount Rushmore, but he's what he's doing is extraordinary. I'm also a fan of the old school. I love what Aaron Wilburn does. Aaron Wilburn of Wilburn Forge does feather Damascus, which is stunning, and it's amazing. I also, one of my friends, I love this guy. I call him my terrifying guardian angel, Nick Anger. He's this giant ghoul that creeps up on me every so often, and what he's doing is extraordinary too. And he's one of the most innovative guys in terms of kind of creating something very recognizable and new. That's three good guys, different guys too. Those three different styles.
Right. Very cool. Yeah.
Do you have any interest in going on a show like Forge and Fire or Master of Arms or anything like that?
Oh, no, I don't really. I mean, it's just like honestly, I've never been a competition guy, and I think that I have a lot of friends who've been on that show, all those shows, and I appreciate it. It's just not for me. I just don't think. I don't think that it would. I just don't. I like this. I like talking like a normal person. I don't want to be edited. I like the idea. I don't feel the need to be put up against other guys. And the other thing is like I feel like I'm semi-human garbage anyway. So I probably won't. I won't. I wouldn't even cough it up. I will tell you a really funny thing. So I've been being buddies with a lot of these Forge and Fire guys, and one of my favorite people on the planet Earth is Bill Benke. Bill Benke is such a good dude. He started making file guides, and he makes awesome file guides. And he also now recently has been making radius platens. He's just a dynamite guy. Every time I see him at Blade Show, he's an older guy, but he's so forward thinking. He embraces social media. He's super cool to younger guys. A lot of older blacksmiths and bladesmiths are just very dismissive of these younger generations. Bill is just one of the nicest guys. And we were talking, and anytime I get a chance to try to sell some file guides for him, I'm happy to do it. I just love everything about him. So he sends me this message, and he goes, "Listen, if you're watching, if you got TV, I'm going to be on Forge and Fire tonight." And then he said at the end, "Don't laugh." So I turned to my wife, and I'm like, "Oh, I think Bill's going to lose." And she said, "What are you saying about that?" She said, "Wow, it just sounds like," he said, "Don't laugh. Why would I mean, if I would laugh, it means like, something went bad. Oh, poor Bill." And I was just like, "Oh, man, I can't. Well, good luck, man. I'm pulling for you." I'm turning to my wife. I'm like, "Hey, fucked him, man. He done." So the next morning I wake up, and that son of a bitch, he got me. He won the whole damn thing. But it was so great because the night before, he was like, I was on Forge and Fire. Don't laugh too hard. I was like, "Oh, poor Bill. Poor good old Bill." And I was like, the fucker got me. He got me at the end. He got me. He won the whole damn thing. He's the best. Bill Benke's the greatest. I love that guy.
Have we seen that one?
I think that was recent. That was this past season, I think, that he was
Yeah,
on.
I think so. I don't know. I don't really.
We probably did a wrap-up for it, but we also did a wrap-up for 39 other episodes, so it's like we don't remember half of it.
You don't have to. We got it. The story's there. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. God bless you.
Have you ever thought about competing in a blade sports competition?
No. I make culinary knives. What kind of competition would I
That looks like good fun.
I don't know if it's fun. To be honest with you, I like to just I've never felt the need to compete. And it's like I can see myself also as a student for life. I'm a member of the bladesmith, the ABS, American Bladesmith Association. I'm a member in good standing, and I will probably never test for journeyman smith. I believe in what they do, but I feel that I'm student for life, and I'm happily student for life. I love, this whole me being a knife expert is ridiculous. I'll tell you how I do things, but it is a little absurd. I mean, when in Epicurious, they call me a knife expert. They're a bunch of millennials. They don't know what. Of course I'm a knife expert. If I had a hot dog in my hand, I'd be a hot dog expert. There's not a whole lot. I wouldn't. A lot of people don't read between the lines on some of this stuff, but my opinion is a student for life, and happily so. I can never imagine the concept of me, waiting, biding my time and waiting those 3 years to get the journeyman smith, and then rush to get the master. I want to do this for the rest of I want to learn shit for the rest of my life. My heroes, Fred Christ, Uri Hoffy, these are students for life. They learn shit every day. Uri Hoffy's 83. He just forged me a hammer. He learns every day. And it's like, that's what I want. The day that I'm like, I can wrap it all up is like, it's toes up right there. I'm not interested.
I want a hot dog expert T-shirt made, and I want you holding a hot dog.
All right. Hand pick. I'll do a hand pick of a hot dog.
So, for a while, okay, so this is on Instagram deep dive now. So I went back on Feder Knives and your Geoff Feder Instagram accounts and just kind of scrolled through some of the stuff that you'd posted throughout the years.
Right.
And for a while, you were making these giant fishing lures, and I know that you did an art show around these fishing lures. So how did that come about, and how you just in general, like the making of these giant fishing lures, how did that come about?
So when I was a freshman in college, when I was in Kenyon College, Ohio is a very big fishing. There's a lot of good places to fish in Ohio, and freshwater fishing is awesome to me. And I became friends with another art major who was a big fisherman, and we used to fish a lot. And I sold a sculpture the first sculpture I ever sold was a giant black and white street cow, a cow made out of street signs. I called it a street cow named Desire. I sold it to a teacher who gave me enough money to buy I had enough money to have the biggest party on the campus with 4 bands. I was a freshman, 4 bands and 2 kegs. I put all the money on. I was going to have the biggest party, and this huge party. I was the only freshman to ever do that. And then I would go fishing at this. So the guy who bought the sculpture said, "You can fish here all that you want." So my buddies and I would go to this pond. We fished the whole time, and I loved fishing. And then we'd get fired up, and we enjoyed it. We'd cut class if the fishing was good. We're really deep into fishing. Loved it. And then we'd go buy lures. And I always make these jokes saying, these lures, the names and the colors. And I was like, these fucking fish don't know anything about these names. Colors. These are for the people. And I really like them. But they're all crazy. It's like these fish don't. Well, I need so many different kinds of fish don't care. They don't even see color, most likely. Well, this is crazy. So I was in the sculpture class where the assignment was to take something small and make it big. So I was just like, well, here, I'll make this lure. So I got a Rapala, and I laminated all this wood together, and I carved the wood out. I made the steel treble hooks, and it was cool. It was really cool. And then somebody was just like, can you make me one? And then from freshman year till, this past year, I've made more lures than I made knives. That's what I did for a living. Is I had galleries in Wyoming and I gallery in New York. And I was selling the lures. They were much more. Then they started to kind of transform, and this is the idea of what an artist is. An artist is really, when you're learning about, or sculptor or painter, when you're trying to create your own style, it's an evolution of an idea. So you don't just say, all right, today I'm going to draw an apple, and then tomorrow I'm going to make a sculpture of a dog. You have this kind of, when people are looking at your work, your body of work, it's this evolution. So maybe, you'll make these little subtle changes, and it's very similar to my knives where you're making these subtle changes. So I'd make these lures, and I'd try to keep them away from looking like Rapalas, and trying to kind of turn into something kind of closer to, what I do now. So I was doing the lures for a long time. They were super, I was doing art shows with the lures, and then I started doing smaller ones, and then I wanted to do more about the collection. So I did this giant, actually it helped me making knives. I had a friend of mine who's a bronze caster, and he was telling me, you welders you're so screwed. The bronze casting is the way to go because you just make one mold and then you knock them out. I'm like, well, fuck you. I'm going to make 60 needlefish. I'm going to carve and paint 60 lures. They're going to be identical. I'm going to carve them identical. I'm going to paint them identical. And, it's a big, you and your bronze casting go beat it. So I made 60, and it was mind numbing because it was like carving 60 every different stage. And you're painting one little dot. You're painting instead of one dot that takes you a minute, it's taking you 5 hours because you've been doing almost 60 of them. So what happens is I learned how to kind of like, I wanted to finish it. And it was how you can organize your time, how you can organize how you build things. And then when I started making the knives, when I was doing batches for these chefs, we'd do, like I recently did 36 for this chef Carl Ruiz. We sold 36, and I had to make 36. You had to get in that mind frame of like, it's going to suck today. We're going to just hand sand today. We're going to hand sand for the next week. And it's going to be the same one step. But if I didn't do those lures that way, I could never do these. I could never feel confident doing these batches. But it brings you to madness. Like I've never been so close to madness. Like you're just one dot, and then all of a sudden you're just like, all right, now I'm going to do this one brushstroke, but now I got to do it 120 times, the same one, because now they're like, I really got to do this and I do this. I'm like, no, and every time you do one stroke, you got to do a stroke for all of them. So it's not like painting. It's like it's madness. It's madness, but. It's totally helped me in regards to this business. I couldn't have been if I hadn't done those lures and that sculpture, I could never have done these knives.
And that sculpture that you have of those, where they're all on the wall and it looks like they're all swimming together in a school, it's awesome. It looks amazing. So that, like, as I'm scrolling through and I saw that, I was looking at it for a good couple minutes, just like, that's incredible. That's like really cool.
That was a fun project. That was a really fun project. The idea of the collection. When I was a kid, I was really into comic books, and like the collection was really important to me. And I like the idea. That's a lot of what a lot of thematic artists do. Is the concept of the collection is always been great. And with lures, it's very much along those lines of the tackle box full. And I would do these art shows that everyone was different, so it looked like it was from your tackle box. But then the concept of the flock, it they were still lures, but they weren't. They were more, there weren't any treble hooks on them. They weren't, they didn't look totally like lures until you looked at them. But as a mass, as a flock, it looked like, a flock of birds, a murder of birds. Is that what they call murmuration? Something like that.
Murder of crows or something.
It's crows, yeah.
Sean, you know about a murmuration? That's when you see they're all flying in this like incredible pattern. It's almost like a swarm.
Oh, okay.
Is that what that's called?
Oh, yeah, a murmuration. There you go.
I was not with you on that.
Hands of the flock. Come on.
Yeah.
So I have one other Instagram deep dive here, and it's just a comment that I wanted to make. Was I was scrolling across and I saw a wooden knife that you had made for your nephew.
Yeah.
And the comment that you wrote on the packaging of the knife was hilarious.
Don't cut off your.
Yeah, don't cut off your wiener. Don't hurt your brother, and don't cut off your wiener.
Yeah, I have these two nephews, and they're these two little cute little, these little nerds, and they're good little guys. And one of them was getting to his it was his birthday was coming up, and I said, well, he was in the shop. He was looking at everything. His dad said, don't touch it, don't touch it. And then I started turning around. I said, what do you want for your birthday? And he goes, I want a knife. And I was like, wow, you're pretty young. I said, but I'll make you a wooden knife. And when I was a kid, that's all I did was make wooden knives. My dad told me how to make knives with a bandsaw, and I was making knives and bows and arrows and all that. So for me to whip that little knife out, it was awesome because it really brought me back to when I was a kid. And then all of a sudden I'm breaking out the Bill Benke file guide to make sure my plunge lines are nice. Like, well, if I got to do it, I got to do it right. And then I was like, I made a badass little wooden knife, and then I thought he was going to beat his brother up with it, and I was just like, don't. And, kids like when you say don't do something in your wiener, and they're like, oh, they like wiener talk. So, so I threw in don't cut off your wiener and don't hit your brother. That was a fan favorite. And then I had to make his brother one. And then I write the same note too. And don't tell me not to, cut off my wiener too.
Sounds like our 6-year-old little one.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, that's it. That's all we got for questions.
Fantastic.
Thanks again for coming on with us. And, I know you guys over at Knife Talk have been, thank you for the shout out on your podcast and the Instagram tags and things like that. We really appreciate it because every time you guys tag us in a story, our follower count jumps a little bit. We get a few
Good.
more. So it's been helping us out, and we really do appreciate it.
Well, we got to keep, we're all in this together. And one of the things that when we started doing Knife Talk is we really felt like it was important to have everybody be involved. And, people want to be involved in these things. So for us, we do a lot, anytime someone does something, we always do something, and we do a lot of fan questions. And the podcast is knifetalk.net. It's Knife Talk. And then we also have a forum on knifetalk.net where it's a lot of, apparently in Europe, they like the forums. I might be too old, but in Europe, In Africa, we got like African knife makers and all these European knife makers. They love a forum, so you can meet up with these guys and they kind of go over things, and it's a great opportunity for people to kind of connect. And then we really do our best to make sure that people are involved. This isn't a radio show where you can call in, so we try to do a lot of. We do a segment called "Hey Man, Can I Ask You a Question?" where you ask us questions, and then there's like, I'll never do that again, or these things that you do in your shop that you don't want, or, like you make a mistake or knock into something.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Yeah. Craig loves the jingles. He cannot control himself. It's fine by me. Listen, it's, he's behind the computer, so he does whatever he wants. He loves the jingles. So, but it's been a lot of fun, and I appreciate you guys reaching out, and I'm fine. I'm perfectly happy with the fact that we didn't go after the $29 knife and pan, but I think you've covered that well, and we don't need to do that.
Well, I do have a comment about that, but it's only going to be one little one.
Go ahead, because it's not going to be little for me. I can't control myself.
So I actually had not seen the commercial of sorts for the Forged in Fire pan.
It's amazing.
It was incredible. Sean sent it to us yesterday, and Theresa and I are flabbergasted watching this thing. So I posted it, and it was easily the most responses to any Instagram thing that I've posted ever. And a number of people just like, are you kidding me? People done lost their damn minds. And then I had one guy at Princeworks Forge.
Oh, yeah, Josh Prince.
Yes, and he goes, can you imagine if 30 years down the line, Forged in Fire is not anything that people remember as a knife-making show, but a pan company.
He was on Forged in Fire. Josh was on Forged in Fire, and he's tight with Jesse James. Jesse James is a big fan of Josh Prince. Prince is a great guy. He's a good dude, man. He makes awesome Damascus too. But, look, I said this on the podcast. They don't care. They're trying to make a couple bucks. If they were smart, I realized this afterwards, they should have got involved with like Carhartt and made like work clothes.
Oh, yeah.
That's the better idea, because all of a sudden now, all of a sudden your customers are different. Like, people need pants, right?
Yeah.
Men and women need pants. And if you want to be like a bladesmith, get yourself like a Forged in Fire edition Carhartt double front jeans or something like that. Well, use your head. Why would you do the pants? It makes no sense at all.
Particularly when it's
idiotic.
It's supposed to be like a lifetime pan. Why would you buy two?
Oh, yeah. You get one for like cheaper.
There's like a sale
to
have two.
That's a good point,
You don't need
Theresa.
two.
Theresa has a good point right there. You're absolutely right. Look, they did what they did. I've said enough. It's just stupid. It's like, but I mean, what do you expect? These guys are going to do what they're going to do.
Yep.
It's the scorpion and the frog, right? Scorpion and the frog, that?
Yes, the scorpion taking a ride on the frog and all that good stuff.
I think we talked about it when we talked about when the whole knife thing started. Yeah. I said, did they just hire a marketing person like 2 months ago and all this stuff just started happening? Because they had nothing for sale before. And then all of a sudden, okay, mugs, shirts, whatever.
David Baker phone cases.
Yeah, I mean,
really?
Oh yeah.
So bizarre.
And now it's the knife set and the pan set, and it's like,
look, I'm under the impression that when you have these trademarks, you'll use them or you lose them.
Yes.
So there might have been a lot involved with that. And I also think that the right guy came at the right time, and they're like, we'll take your money, no problem. And because I mean, clearly there's no clips in those stupid videos from the show, except for that, tiny forge that you couldn't possibly put a pan in.
Right.
And the hammering of the anvil and the hammering of the pans. It's my, and then the stupidest part is the pressure washer. They put a pressure washer up against probably the worst painted car of all time. It's like what car you put a pressure washer up against, the paint just flies off like that, and then they put it on the pan and nothing's happening. Well, why would it? It's not paint. Why would you think paint would come out? Some paint on the pan, and then this woman is flipping an omelet, and then to flip it, she blows on it, and the omelet comes off onto the plate.
You can't eat that. It's a piece of paper.
What kind of mental patient thinks that here, blow on it, and then the thing flies off, and that shows you how good of It shows you how good of a pan it is. It shows you that the woman obviously doesn't have emphysema. That's it. It's stupid. It's the whole thing's idiotic. But look, that's what they did. Listen to what they did. He said, all right, well, we're clearly not going to listen to fans of the Forge because what are they saying on fans of the Forge? Nothing. They don't care. Those executives, they don't go on social media. They don't care about all the angry knife makers that are never going to watch the show again. They don't care.
No, they don't.
Go ahead, buy my $29. Why wouldn't you sell $29 pants? It just seems like it makes more sense. I think that if they did that, if they worked with like a company like Carhartt, an American company, and did Carhartt pants, I think people would be like, you know what? Good for you. Using these American companies that we support, we wear these clothes, and boom. And that would have been an easy thing to be the.
I think Jay Nielsen actually has a deal with Carhartt or something too to wear their clothes on the show. So it's even that much more ridiculous.
You know, and that's the irony of ironies is these guys can wear their clothes, but you know, all the contestants, you get their first name and then you get a pin drop on a Google map from where they're from.
Yep.
That's what they do. And it's just like, come on, guys.
Only if they make it to the end.
Yeah, you know the name of their forge unless they're at the final.
I'm under the impression you don't even know the name of their forge, and the whole thing is you know that's the issue is really I'm telling you that I'm imagining that these are just legal issues, so it's not has nothing to do with like they're making this decision. I think that there's some legal, you know, when lawyers get involved, there's a whole lot of things you can and can't do. Yeah. But it's like, you know, you should be throwing these guys bones. And here's the real issue, and I know you want to leave, and I don't blame you. The real issue is a lot of the contestants, and I believe in the working person. Like I worked with my hands. My dad used to refer to me negatively as my son the welder. Like it was a disgusting thing, you know. A lot of these guys, they go onto the show and they think, I'm going to be famous. And really what happens is there's no such thing. You know, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. What you have to do is you have to figure out a way to leverage you being on that show to turning it into something. But a lot of these guys, they just assume I'm about to be famous, and then you get home and like, why isn't the phone ringing? You know, these guys aren't really. They're getting a little bit too starstruck in regards to what's going to happen. And I've talked to Fortune Fire guys who are like, they ended up before they got off the show, and they're like, we're going to invest because we're going to get a slew of orders, and you know nothing because there's no way that people know who these people are.
Right.
And it makes me sad because a lot of these guys, they have this idea of what fame is, and without a business plan, you know, I was saying to somebody, you know, $10,000, even if you win it. What would be the smart thing to do? I mean, you can't get a good website for $10,000.
Right.
You know, what's the smart thing to do if you're trying to get into business with $10,000? $10,000 isn't going to help you in business. So a lot of these guys, they just assume that good stuff is going to happen, and it doesn't. And that's the one thing about this show that I really dislike, and I feel like it gets to the point where they're kind of taking advantage of the naivety of people who don't know about television. Not like I do, but like I don't trust any of these motherfuckers, to be honest with you. But I do believe that the hardest part is this managing the expectations of the people going on these shows and saying, well, what's going to happen? How can I like rally this into, you know, business? You know, how can I turn this into something that can happen as opposed to, all right, I did my job, phone ready to go. And then they don't capitalize on their situation.
Right.
Beef out. That's it.
Thank you for that. What is the word I'm going for here?
Long soliloquy.
Dissertation?
Dissertation. Oh, manifesto is good too.
That works too. I was just going to say unexpected where's the beef segment from Knife Talk.
Where's the beef? We bitch and moan at the end. You know?
Well, let's leave it at that. That was a great time. Thanks again for coming on with us. Where should people look for you online?
Feder Knives, FEDERKNIVES on Instagram. And I'm also one of the hosts of Knife Talk with Mareko Momasi, Forge and Fire champion, and Craig Lockwood of Chop Knives, Momasi Fire Arts and Chop Knives. We do a weekly podcast called Knife Talk. It's fun. It's not all knives. It's a little bit of, you know, fooling around, and it's been a lot of fun, and that's where you find me.
Great. Well, thanks again, and thanks everybody for watching. Follow Geoff, and stay tuned for the next one.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Bring it out there.
We're with Geoff.